Former President Trump campaigning in key battleground states today, taking advantage of a full day off from his criminal trial in New York. NTD's Jack Bradley has more from Freeland, Michigan.
I'm here in Freeland, Michigan, where former President Trump is holding a rally right after he held one earlier today in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Both of these states are key battleground states in this election. And both of these states, Trump lost to Biden in 2020. Michigan, he lost by less than 3 percentage points. In Wisconsin, he lost by less than 1%. However, a poll by the Harvard Caps Harris poll this week puts Trump ahead of Biden. 48% of the participants said they would back Trump, 43% for Biden, and 9% said that they were unsure. Earlier, I spoke with Epoch Times reporter on this campaign, Lawrence Wilson, to hear his thoughts about it.
These are close races. They're both states with a lot of electoral votes, and so both candidates are vying hard for them. And President Trump is here today to bring his message about the economy, and particularly hammer, I think, the current president on his job with inflation, because both these states have been pretty hard hit with inflation.
President Trump is expected to bring up the inflation under the Biden administration, as well as the record-breaking surge in illegal immigration, as well as the hush money case that's now entering its third week. And Trump has to appear at every one of these trials, or else he faces the possibility of arrest. Yesterday, he was just fined $9,000 by the judge, saying he violated a gag order related to the case. This case stems from his former lawyer paying an adult film store, Stormy Daniels, back in 2016 not to go public. And Trump is accused of falsifying business records related to this case, all of which Trump has repeatedly denied these allegations. While this is happening, President Biden is holding a press conference in Waukesha in support of abortion and abortion rights, and those granted under Roe v. Wade. Reporting from Freeland, Michigan, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
New details on the occupation of Columbia University's historic Hamilton Hall. The NYPD was called in by the institution to arrest pro-Palestinian agitators last night. A similar scene unfolded at the City College of New York. NTD's Fiona G. brings us more.
Approximately 300 people were arrested at Columbia and City College. We are processing the arrests to distinguish between who were actual students and who were not supposed to be on the ground. These external actors with a history of escalating situations and trying to create chaos, not to peacefully protest, but create chaos.
The NYPD released a video of a professional protest consultant who was reportedly seen instructing protesters outside Hamilton Hall. Occupying students made human chains, destroyed security cameras, and took steps to avoid arrest. Police say these tactics clearly point to outside influence. They warn the methods can spread to anti-Israel encampments at other schools. In a letter to the NYPD, the president of Columbia University asked for police to stay on campus until at least May 17th. The encampment has now been cleared from the lawn of the university. Students arrested now face expulsion from the school and criminal charges. At City College, protesters lit flares and clashed with police. After clearing out agitators, the NYPD removed a Palestinian flag from the campus flagpole and raised the American flag. College authorities stated that calling the NYPD was a response to repeated acts of vandalism and violence, and not a crackdown on peaceful protest. Violence continues on college campuses. At the University of California, Los Angeles, police was called in when physical attacks began between opposing groups. The university has now canceled classes in response to the chaos. Nationwide, over 1,000 protesters have been arrested. Fiona G., NTD News.
Meanwhile, across the country, police have been called in to several universities to clear out pro-Palestine protests on the campuses of UCLA. Order is now restored following a violent clash overnight. Footage shows people walking through the encampment while law enforcement officers patrol around the area. Last night, scuffles erupted between pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli demonstrators at UCLA. Police later stepped in to disperse the crowd. Wednesday's classes are canceled in the wake of the incident. The university said police are stationed on campus to, quote, help promote safety. Arrests also took place in other states, from Florida to Georgia to North Carolina. So far, hundreds of students have been arrested across the country. With reports of anti-Israel protests devolving into anarchy overnight at UCLA, should police have been called earlier? Joining me now to discuss the latest developments in the protests erupting nationwide is attorney Ken Tashie. He serves as a higher education fellow at Campus Reform. Ken Tashie, thank you so much for joining us. Early this morning, LAPD reportedly arrived with riot gear at the UCLA campus to gain control of the campus after hours of chaos between anti-Israel protesters and pro-Israel counter-protesters who tried to take down the anti-Israel encampment themselves. Mayor Karen Bass calling this violence at UCLA absolutely abhorrent and inexcusable on X. Police were markedly missing, though, when protests escalated for hours. Should police have been called in earlier?
Well, Chris, thank you very much for having me. You know, look, I'm glad to see UCLA has finally stepped up and taken some appropriate steps to try to regain control of its campus. But it seems a little late at this point. There's been a number of events and activities that have occurred on that campus over the last few weeks, as there has been across the country. And it's apparent that college administrators have just been either unable or unwilling to step into that breach and to deal with these matters appropriately. And now only after weeks of protests on campuses by, frankly, a mob, you're now finally seeing institutions stepping up, asking law enforcement to come in and disband these groups and taking steps and efforts that, frankly, the university administrators should have taken some time ago.
And Ken, at Tulane University, the president announced 6 people have been arrested and 7 students suspended for participating in an unlawful demonstration. He said an additional suspension is coming, and there are reports of university employees being involved. Many of the protesters are not affiliated with the university. Who are these people?
Well, I mean, look, I think we all know there's professional agitators and professional anarchists that sort of roam the country and attach themselves to any number of different protests that are occurring around the country. But I also find it interesting and ironic that many of the institutions are claiming that these protesters are not their own students. And if that is the case, then for what reason would they be negotiating with these individuals? If they frankly have no rights on their campuses as students or as employees, there really is no motivation to negotiate with them. Call in the police, call in law enforcement, take back your campus, take back your buildings, remove these encampments from your property. So it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me that institutions are actually negotiating with individuals who have absolutely no affiliation with their institutions, if in fact that is the case.
Now, NYPD was called in after campus police arrested 25 protesters at City College of New York for repeated acts of violence. NYPD restored the American flag on the campus after anti-Israel agitators replaced it with a Palestinian flag. When the American flag is mishandled or misplaced like that, are there federal charges that can be brought against these protesters?
Well, there are indeed federal laws that apply to how the American flag is flown, when it's flown, where it's flown, what other flags can be flown in relation to the American flag. So at a minimum, whether it's the American flag or any other piece of property at that institution, the removal of it, the damage of it, the theft of it could be subject to all types of criminal prosecution. And it's really important to emphasize that people not get confused between the right to peacefully protest, to engage in legitimate debate and discussion, to tolerate other views and perspectives. None of that is going on here. These folks are engaging in conduct that would otherwise be described as discrimination or harassment, intimidation, threats, interference with the operation of these institutions, none of which finds cover under the First Amendment. And it's about time that campuses are starting to react to these actions and these activities appropriately.
All right, Ken Tashie, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. Have a nice day.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.